and we'll see how we do today. Okay, we're back again here at allpointstv.com, and we're glad to see all of you out there in the listenership and the viewership, because we're both radio and television. So that's WFOV, and that's Mr. Paul Herring, the great Paul Herring. And he's doing a good job over there on University Drive. He's over there at the University of, used to be the Technical School of General Motors, now Kettering University, and he is over there with the big folks. Or small university folks are not quite as, we're not the technical school, we're not quite as big as they are. Glad to be with you today, and glad you're here to hopefully partake of some things that no one is talking about. We try to bring a few ideas that maybe some of the big shots have not covered, and we're the little shots, so we got to try to do some, we're bad and clean up. This is the week after the 20th anniversary. I know you were very much observant of all the activities on television this past Saturday and also Sunday, where they were memorializing the fallen that died on 9/11/2001, when 4 planes were hijacked inside the United States. 3 of them used as guided missiles into the trade center and trade building centers in New York, and 1 of the planes in Virginia County, the Pentagon building, and the other plane going down in Pennsylvania. 4 planes in all, 19 hijackers, and the number of deaths are recorded different numbers, but I think the most accurate one, the one I've seen more often, I would say, is the one where there were 2,996 persons that died in those 4 events. We were rightfully memorializing that horrid moment in our history, but I don't think we have actually gone into analysis of a lot of other things that were going on attendant to that particular event. I don't think we really understand what occurred in terms of some of the misdirection that began to happen almost immediately after the reports were out. And I want to try to come in and behind some of the pundits and say a few things about maybe some things that they did not, I'm just assuming that they did not consider. I do want to say a few things, first of all, about what we all have been told, and I think we all can agree with this part of the analysis. First of all, President Bush 44, was surprised to hear the news, right? You could see the person coming in from the side and whispering in his ear, and he's telling him, "Mr. President, we had a plane that flew into one of the World Trade Center buildings in New York." And the president is obviously surprised to hear the news, but then he's shocked when moments later the same person comes back and tells him a second plane is hit. And then the horror you can see in Bush's face, because that then meant we are at war with somebody, that this is not a Cessna plane or some other low-flying plane. This is a deliberate act. And now the question is, who are we at war with? But we are at war with somebody, because 2 planes hitting like that is not an accident. All of a sudden we now know that we have got to defend the country from any further attacks of that kind. And the word went out, and all planes coming into the United States must stop, and no other planes allowed to enter the shores of the country until we got a handle on what was going on. And that's important, but overlooked by all the pundits in terms of what the implication of that would be. Because all the planes that were hijacked were already inside the United States. And the hijackers were here also. And that is part of the immediacy of the cover-up, the distractions that began to occur in the aftermath of this bombing, if you want to call it that, the bombing of this country, using our own airplanes to do it. We were attacked by our own airline. This is not somebody flying planes from outside the country. This was an attack from within the country by people who were here, and that's what began to be covered up almost immediately. And you see it when maybe you didn't see it, but I'm telling you what you could see if you go back and watch the tapes. And that would be the case, the situation where President Bush takes the megaphone out of the hands of the fireman. You remember he has his arm around the fireman, a certain amount of comradeship and solidarity with the first responders. And he says, I hear you, and the world hear you, and those that knock down these buildings are going to hear from all of us. And he said that will happen soon. Well, it may seem innocent enough, and certainly that seems to be an appropriate response, but let's understand something here. The ones who knocked down those planes were on a suicide mission. 19 persons were on those planes as hijackers on those 4 planes. And each one of those persons died in those crashes. So then, to then say, as Bush did, that those who knocked these buildings down, we hear from all of us soon, those persons were already dead. So, what was that about? You pundits that were discussing this past weekend, who are using, and what we've been doing for the last 20 years, are using the memorializing of the dead as a way of covering up and distracting from a very critical and crucial issue here. And that crucial issue is, how did those persons get in this country without being detected by the intelligence community, which consists of the NIA, the CIA, and the FBI at a minimum, and any other units of security we have in the nation, the local level and state level, and how they escape all the radar this country has on all these different levels. How did that happen? And when you say we're going to make people hear from us that did this, when all the ones that brought those buildings down and brought those planes down, every last one of those persons were dead, then what is that really about? And I'm contending here that this is a cover-up that began at that point, because what was being pointed away from was the fact that our government was distracted. This mammoth, oversized, bloated government was distracted doing other things than what it should be doing, which is basically two things. The government has basically two primary functions. One is to keep us free. And the other one is to keep us safe. That's what we pay taxes for. We want government to protect us, and we want government to keep us free. And the question is not only which of those functions that government was faulty in carrying out on that day and on any other day, but is government the major culprit in those two arenas? Is government keeping us safe? And is government keeping us free? And the question there is also, if this is government keeping us free, then who's going to keep us free from the government? So what I see going on in the aftermath of this bombing of this country using our own airplanes was a cover-up, because somebody dropped the ball and the mission of government was subverted by the attack, but also by those who did not prevent it, because that's their job. And they did not fulfill their job because government is too bloated and too big and too onerous and too distracted to do that which we are paying taxes for the government to do. I read some of the documents that showed that they were aware of reports, back-channel reports, that an attack was imminent in this country. It had come out of Belgium. And they had reports that the attack was imminent. I'm not saying they were planning it or involved in any of those things. I'm not going into that. I don't think that's true. I've heard a lot of the theories, but I don't think that's true. I don't think the documentation shows that. It is documented, though, and I think the document is very clear. They were aware that an attack was imminent, was planned imminently, and it was going to be at some point. What they were surprised, though, by it was the way in which it came out, the way it played out. Those hijackers were already inside this country.
And they had to be helped by somebody in government to actually ferret out the most vulnerable spot. And how to do that, they had to have some government input, some government bureaucrat, somebody subordinate, whatever. Because how they did that, okay, it's amazingly simple, but they had to have some knowledge of how to orchestrate that. And they did that brilliantly. I mean, I hate to say it brilliantly. They died in the attacks. I mean, but to me, it was kind of that's a typical thing of that mentality from that semi-quasi-religious group that they're belonging to, though. I mean, in my opinion, because they don't care if they sacrifice themselves in it. They got a better life afterwards. So I don't agree with that position. I don't think you should murder innocent people.
That's how they think of it.
Yeah, so I mean, but they had to have some government input on how to carry that out. The thing is, we got people of their ilk in our government positions. I mean, they got them all over. I mean, it's even more now. You know, they got more people who have that mentality in different parts of our government.
Our government has shown itself to be a very inept. We have inept politicians. And the leadership of this country has been exposed for the ineptitude that they represent. These are not very smart people, and the best and brightest don't go into government.
I say I disagree with you on one thing.
Okay, go ahead.
they're very good at being politicians. They're just really
that's what
suck
they-
when it comes to being decent human beings.
Yeah, they're very
Because
good.
they're consummate professionals.
They're consummate politicians. But politicians don't. What skills do you need to be a politician? What skills are required? And we're not talking about rocket science. We're not talking about people that have any medical authority, any medical knowledge, anything like that. Certainly no knowledge about climate and things that they areas to get into to make it appear that they are knowledgeable. I don't see anything that they talk about, quite frankly, ever on any subject where there's a knowledge based upon what they're saying. In fact, it's gotten to a point that when they come on some program, I have programs I watch on television. I always tape them so I can save some time in watching them. Since commercials take up 21 minutes of the hour, programs that are an hour long, 21 minutes of that time is on commercials. 39 minutes would be on the actual programming. As you know, the programs are designed to deliver the viewer to the advertisers. And the reason why programs are canceled is because they're not delivering enough of the viewers to the advertisers, and that's how you get canceled if you don't fulfill that basic commercial responsibility. But I'm looking at these political figures. I'm talking about the fact that in the arena, in the political arena, we don't have really smart people in our government. I mean, who are the scholars up there in Washington right now? I know people are going to say Ted Cruz.
AOC.
Yeah, and so not Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. It's not Rashida Tlaib. It's not Ilham Omar. These are people that it's really what this wonderful congresswoman from Georgia, one of the few up there that really is serious about her responsibilities, about the responsibilities of a congressperson, and that's Taylor Greene. That is that's incredible. This woman has tremendous courage, and she's standing up for the American people. One of the few that's up there doing that. You certainly can't say that about some of those old heads like the two-faced Mitch McConnell, and I don't know many face this other guy has, the one from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham. I don't know how many sides of his mouth he talks out of. I mean, this guy is really a political comedian. I didn't say comedian. Changes colors and stripes with the weather. Lindsey Graham. Anytime that man opens his mouth, everything comes out of this man's mouth. It's self-serving. This man cannot be trusted. I don't know I really don't know why we have incumbents that are long-standing in government. It's certainly not because they're doing such an outstanding job that cannot be replaced by anyone else, and yet we keep putting them in there over and over again.
What do you think that is? Do you think people are just too lazy to learn new names, new players?
Yeah, and familiar doing that which they're familiar with. Unless you raise the alarm, the assumption is that the person is doing the job they are elected to do, because nothing is out there in mainstream saying anything otherwise. Many of them try to get their heads down so that they don't raise the alarm. Like this one guy that's the Senator Peters here in Michigan. Nobody knows him. He's a nondescript politician. You never hear anything about him? John Peters never...
I never knew the guy until he got in the office. I mean,
you never hear anything about him, do you? He keeps his head down.
I'm going to pull up his... Go and talk for a while. I'm going to bring in what his background is.
Yeah, okay, good. Do that. And, you know... And he's never on any programs, and he runs as an incumbent, so that's also a part of it. And the familiarity with the fact that name is on the ballot before, and so people just make an assumption. You know, when I took some students to Washington on the program called Close Up, the people that would receive the students, we would take the students to Washington. The people in Washington would then take over, and they would be there for a week, learning about the government, close up, having a close up study of the government. And one of the guys that was one of the persons that was talking to the students in one of the workshops said the first thing you should do when you get ready to vote and you get your vote, you're old enough to vote, is vote against the incumbent. And
I'll find out what his background was.
Okay.
From 1991 to 1993, he was a member of the Rochester Hills City Council. From 95 to 2002, he was a member of the Michigan Senate. From 2009 to 2013, representative of Michigan 9th District. 2000 to 2015, Michigan representative 14th District. Now he's the senator.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's from 93 till now. That's over 20-some years.
Married to the government.
Yeah, married to government. What is he before? I mean, what was he before? I mean, he just appeared to me. He was never somebody I had heard about. I mean, I'm not, especially when it comes to Democrats, I'm not a person who wants to listen about it because, let's face it, they're common. If you basically absorb all the information about them because they're so plentiful here. I mean, they're like dog poop. I mean, they're everywhere here. I mean,
yeah, I don't listen to them, quite frankly. I don't think that they are learned. And those that have a lot on the ball are not going to be up there for a career. They're out there trying to make things happen, and they are doing things that more fully utilize their talent. And
I guess he was.
I
guess you had been in the Navy. He was in the Navy.
That's part of the government also.
He's got a lieutenant commander rank in the. Lieutenant commander, would that be in the Navy? Yeah, that'd be the Navy.
Yeah, so they're not in the private sector, though, and that's where your skills, you're not going to be in the private sector and don't have any skills because you got to do things that are productive in order for the business to be able to be viable, and to you have to make a profit or you're out of business.
Well, you know, he spent 22 years as an investment advisor, working briefly in academia. He was elected official the Rochester Hills City Council in 1991 and represented the 14th District and the Michigan Senate from 1995 to 2002. He was Democratic nominee for the Michigan Attorney General in 2002, narrowly losing to Republican Mike Cox. He was then appointed commissioner of the Michigan Lottery by then Governor Jennifer Granholm, serving from 2003 to 2008. I mean, but also from looking at his education, he's got like a JD from Wayne State, which is a Juris Doctorate, and then he also has got an MA from Wayne State and an MA from Michigan State University, and he also went to University of Detroit with an MBA and Alma College, but he's got a BA in there, so he's got a good education, I guess, but I mean, he's also, again, looks like he's a lawyer for quasi-economics, so basically this guy knows how to screw us in two different ways. Okay? So
I look at those resumes. I'm not. I want to see what have they done in the productive workforce, not in the political arena, because that's the proof of their productivity. To be creating something, and then out of that comes some other skills that can be utilized. But what I see in those kinds of resumes are people that want to get on the public dime and then live off the taxpayers. And I notice that he does not make any waves. Most persons don't. I mean, what contact does he have inside the state? Most persons don't even know who who their senator is. They don't know that Peterson stabbing all the senators here in the state. Stabenow keeps her head. She keeps her head down too, because if you make waves, you draw people's attention to it, and when you raise people's eyebrows, that's when problems occur. Because part of the masking is them keeping the head down. When they raise their head up, you see what happens to them. Look at Como. I mean, Como's been a mafia type ever since he went into office, and how many terms has he served as governor? But once he drew the spotlight to him, people, that's who they had in there. But they kept voting in there. But when he raised his head up and they were able to see behind that mask, and I consider politics to be the art of deception. Once they went behind some of the things that these persons say that deceive us as to who they really are and what they really represent, basically laziness and things of that sort. Don't want to get their hands dirty, and so they go into government and there's a guaranteed income without having to go through too much stress. You sit up there on a committee and you're going to make a ruling on something. You have to listen to what they're saying. You make up your mind. You got a political point of view. And you sit there, and that's your job. Sit there and in a seat. You're not producing anything except and not writing anything, because all the legislation is written by lobbyists. So if you ask 100 people in this state right now who their senators are, I would bet you that 95 out of the 100 could not tell you who the two senators are, either one. I would doubt if they can name either one of the senators here. They just simply run, and you don't hear from them, and you don't hear anything they're doing in Washington. But if they do what Gavin Newsom did, what Gretchen Whitmer did in this state, shutting down the economy and making people wear masks, and then they're not observing the rules that they want to enforce.
Going part. Okay, if she would said wear the mask, and every time I saw her was wearing a mask, I could maybe give it more credence. She did care. But every time they captured her on camera, she and her cronies are all sitting around maskless and just laughing their butts off with the rest of us. Basically you got to walk the walk to be convincing. You just can't say, I'm down with you, man. I've also made sacrifice. She's never made any sacrifice. Right when this started, she and her husband they're telling us not to go up north. She and her husband and her family were going to have an open house for their daughter up north. She just didn't want the peasants around that lake, because how dare they come around the queen. Oh my God. We might have to talk to you, so no. And then they're just so arrogant about their
they are.
And arrogant about everything.
They want to control everybody else's life. They're not in control of their own life, and they want to make rules for everyone else. They don't intend to follow the rules themselves. They want to make rules for all of us, and that part of it. They're very good at ordering people around, but the rules they're making for everybody else, they're not following themselves, and we've seen it time and time and time again. You know what? What ended the flu epidemic in 1918? They were talking about influenza, and they were talking about how many persons died. They inflated the numbers. All these persons, you hear all these different numbers. I just read a report the other day that said about maybe 6 million people nationwide would have died of what they call the flu or influenza, but they got these exaggerated numbers as if the whole nation, the whole country was dying. But what ended the fear of it as they were having people masked at that time, was that they saw the very ones out there promoting it and advocating wearing masks at a game. And there was a news reporter there that took pictures of it. 3 different politicians sitting together. Neither one of them was masked. And they showed that on the front page of the paper the next day. And there was such a outcry that they decided that the flu was over. And that's how that came to an end. It wasn't that the air quality was changed, just like the COVID virus. I mean, how you get out of that? You said that the virus was one that escaped out of a lab in Wuhan province in China and is in the air, and you cannot spray it out of here. So how are they going to get out of that? So
Kamala Harris made a comment about protecting the vaccinated. Okay, protect them from what? If it's supposed to be vaccinations to prevent you to get the virus, then they're covered, right?
Right.
And are they really being vilified that much by the non-vacciners that much? I don't think so, because guess what? You can walk past a person vaccinated and not know it. So guess what? I don't think they're being targeted for anything. So I mean, you're saying that there's still a chance that there might actually get the virus even after being vaccinated. Bill Maher got vaccinated. So follow the science. I'm a scientist. No, you're not. I mean, he got read already out of the libertarian camp because he kept on saying he was a libertarian years ago, and he has nothing contacted to being a libertarian at all. He's a big government statist jerk.
That's he's definitely a big statist.
Yeah, but
the point. I want to come back to the central point I'm making, and that is the distractions of these politicians. Whenever they are doing things, you always watch both hands. And while they are using one hand to do the misdirection, maybe you need to watch the other hand as well, see what the other hand is doing. But they're very good in terms of distracting the public. I think that's what George Bush was doing. Bush knew that the government had failed its responsibility. These persons had taken our own airplanes and flew our planes from these shores into those buildings. You can't get on that megaphone and say, with all those persons dead, they're gonna hear from all of us soon. Those persons those guys committed suicide. And nobody was talking about that these last several days. Rightfully, they read the names of all the ones who died on that day, and that was very appropriate. But they should have read also the names of all the ones in government that failed them. 535 members of Congress, Condoleezza Rice is on TV this past weekend. She was Secretary of State at that time. And she's talking, and they asked her, are we safer now than we were 20 years ago? And of course, she's not going to say we're less safe, because she wants to act like the investment in all of that misdirection has made us safer. And so her answer was, when they asked her, well, do you think that we're safer now than we were in 2001? And there they are now with all our equipment. I've listed all the equipment in one of my posts on Facebook, how much equipment that they collected, not recovered, collected rather than collected on the battlefield. This is another part of it, the deception of these politicians. All that equipment left in the battlefield, $85 to $90 billion of taxpayers' money placed in the hands of the Taliban, whom we are fighting. And has anybody consulted with the great Logan, who's on Fox Nation, and her program, which is very important? She does one of the more, outside of Tucker Carlson, her program is, well, this is my opinion, the second most important program on television. Most of these guys in journalism from Columbia University. I don't know what they're teaching over there. Most of them come out of there. It's a journalism school. And most of them come out of there, nothing but a bunch of leftist, it's not journalism. It's fake news. I'm talking about all these people misdirecting the American people, telling us one thing when something else is the case. The fake news, the fake politicians. It's amazing American people have any understanding what's going on. But take Laura Logan. Laura Logan, her program is called Laura Logan Has No Agenda. How many of them in Washington can say that? How many politicians do you think can say that they don't have an agenda? Not very many. If they don't have an agenda, they can't get elected. And the agenda is what Thomas Sowell says. Agenda 1, 2, and 3. Getting elected, and getting reelected. That's the agenda. And that's why most of them keep their head down and only come up when necessary, and they cannot avoid it, or they jump in front of a popular issue and act like they are in the leadership of the parade. That they are leaders. First of all, that they're leaders. That's another one. Politicians leading us. We're not being led by politicians. Politicians are not leaders. And they're very good at politics. And politics is the art of deception. It's not the art of compromise. That's an art they don't have. They don't look at how they're fighting up there. They're not compromising.
But
not for the good of the American people.
But we already pointed out that the people get reelected all the time because of name recognition. People are just too lazy to try to study up, see who could be better, maybe even advocate for somebody they know locally to run. See, the thing is, the democracy, the republic we're supposed to have depends on a very educated populace. But we got people we got people with basically got the attention spans of a puppy. I mean, I'm serious. I mean, just a few seconds and they're on to something else. And the press feeds on that and creates it. I mean, they might show you a news story. You might even have Fox News. You might have CNN. But there's no really in-depth analysis. And the thing is, most people will just say, oh, I'm against that because so-and-so says to be against this, or I'm for this because such and such says to be with us. There's no real effort. And because basically you have families, you have job obligations, you're just basically, at the end of the day, all this stuff that's going on, it's a very complex culture. So, I mean, the more coming at us, we can't really discern. I mean, we really don't have the time to delve into it, the possible consequences. The thing is, we're supposed to have people who are good at this, studying this and analyzing it. But typically, they're also in one camp or the other. And then they're usually employed by one network or the other. That's where he's like All Points TV. I wanted to get people in with all backgrounds, sit down, have dialogue, fleshing out, and then see the personalities behind what they're advocating and make your better assessment. But I mean, we don't have that in the media. Basically, they're more concerned about selling products for advertisers than they are for actually getting in-depth analysis.
That's why they're sitting in those chairs. They got to get those ratings in order to stay in those chairs, and that's what they're working on. CNN has lost almost all of its viewership because they don't have Trump anymore, and now that they have a whipping post, the mediocrity of the hosts, almost all of them. I don't know a single one over there that has any. They don't even let Jim Acosta do any of it. Have you seen him in the in the conferences when Jen Psaki is doing her press conferences? Do you see him in that room? He's not in that room because they don't want to contrast how he would be acting in that arena and how he acted when Trump was there. And of course, all the leftist viewers would watch that because they want Trump to be put down and things of that sort. Now that Trump is gone, they don't have their whipping post anymore, and their rating is falling off the chart. Nobody's watching CNN anymore.
Have you heard any of the Biden supporters coming out crowing about his successes? I mean, has anybody come out and say, "Yay, Mr. Biden"?
No, they're just covering for him. The man is they simply are not covering a lot of things. They're not even going to cover. John, you saw that woman that was wearing that gorilla mask out there in California. Larry Elder is running for governor, and they're frightened out of the possibility that Newsom might be recalled. I don't personally think it's going to happen. I wish it would. It would send shockwaves through the political system if that occurred, because that's 55 electoral votes, and if that state swings, that's a lot of things that could be shaken up in this country for the good of the country. But I don't think this recall is going to work. I would love to be wrong, but I don't think that the numbers are there to bring it about. Don't forget, California is the bluest state in the union. I mean, I don't know. I don't think a Republican has a statewide position in that state. There are some representatives in the districts are carved up, so there are some enclave where conservatives can elect representatives, but you'd be hard pressed in California to get a tidal wave of liberals out of office in that state. And those 55 representatives that they have in Congress, how many conservatives you think you got in there? You got Nunes. I mean, I don't know, not Issa. This guy that stepped down, and then he stepped down as a way of hiding his bias against Trump. Darrell Issa, ISSA, and he came back when Trump was gone, and came back and ran for his seat again. But he stepped down prior to that. Nobody saw that, but that's what this guy did. He wanted to get out of the way and allow the impeachment of Donald Trump to go forward, and didn't want to be in there to take a stand against the impeachment. So he stepped down, and then after one term came back and then reclaimed his seat. You got those kind of Democrats in California in the Republican Party. A lot of, they call them rhinos, but they're really Democrats. And that's what they're doing. They just simply are there and the masters of deception, and they're deceiving the American people. And the American people got to look behind those masks and find out what's really going on. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to save this country. These people, basically, Congress is made up of Marxists. There are those who are more overtly that, and there are some that's not quite as overtly that, but they're all up there as Marxists. That's why we have liberty being taken from us. You know, we're gonna wake up if we don't stop this train, we're gonna wake up one morning and we're just gonna be living in tyranny, which is what happened in Australia. I'm sure they're shocked down in the land down under. Who saw that coming? They relinquished their guns, and the guns were, people would get too much shooting going on, and they relinquished their guns. The state took the guns over, and now look what they're doing in Australia. They woke up, and all of a sudden they're living in tyranny. They're doing things down there you never thought would happen in a country that's somewhat westernized because of its westernized background.
But you know what's weird? Okay,
and that can happen here. It is happening here.
Okay, we have law enforcement does what the government tells them to do, and that could be good. It could be bad, but yet we have a political party, the Republican Party, always law and order, law and order, law and order. What the Nazis did to the Jews and the other minorities within Germany was legal. So guess what? They can do anything atrocious,
Legal.
horrific, and you got people out there saying, I still should respect those blue suits and those blue bellies, and because they're the thin blue line. Well, they will do anything the government tells them. Why should I have any respect for these people? They're whores. They're taking a paycheck to do whatever they be told to do. I have no respect for these people. I don't. Because you'll have some that resist. I mean, they already spoke out against the mandates. Those few. Guess what? Those are going to be pushed aside. They're going to be pushed aside rapidly. They're going to be removed easily. Either just say, get out of here, you're fired, and they're not going to stick around, they're not getting a paycheck, or they'll eliminate them however they want to, more brutally if they choose to. But, I mean, to have respect for authority just because it's authority is asinine. And that's like this one party. Everything. I support the behind the blue. I don't like them altering the flag either. I don't. See, that's why I can't belong to the Republican Party. I don't like Israel. I don't want to support Israel. And I don't believe supporting the blue unquestionably. Unquestionably. I mean, and that's the thing is, you got to. Those are articles of faith for the Republican Party. And that's where I part ways.
You know, the people that turned us against the people in blue were making use of them on 911 and were lauding them as being the first responders and how they went in those buildings and did all these great things. And then when it behooved them to then distract from themselves by using the police as another whipping post, they did it also. It's like, for example, the Frankenstein type thing, where you create a Frankenstein. Okay, that would be in this case here, the police. In this case, but but if you look at the Frankenstein creator, the idea would be then that if the Frankenstein monster is bad, then the one that created the monster is worse than he is. So whatever the person in blue are, the ones that are sending them out there are worse than they are. That's who I'm targeting. That's who I'm focused on. I'm not, all these distractions and all this misdirection that they are capable of engaging in, it's like my focus is right on that guy and that girl. Those women and those men in those positions of power, that's what I focus on. And I'm aware of all the little distractions. I watch the distractions. When I watch commercials, I watch the people in the background. Watch those commercials sometime. Watch people in the background. That's where the decisions are being made, even in those commercials. The person in the forefront of the commercials are the ones that are doing the distraction by getting you to consciously focus on that, where they can get to the back of the mind of the brain where the decision is made, the post-hypnotic decision is made. So they got to distract the frontal lobe and get to the place where they plant the message so it can be acted on later on. You're not getting up from TV set and then run to the store and buy anything. You're going to continue to watch the program. But that message got to be planted. And so what's going on in the forefront is one thing, but you need to start watching what's going on in the background. I learned that when I read the books, the 3-volume work by Wilson Brian Key, the Canadian media analyst, and his 3 volumes of work. Subliminal Seduction, Media Sex Exploitation, and the clam plate origin, the clam plate orgy, and other subliminal manipulations, the name of his book, the third one he put out. And he named it because when they were sitting at the dinner table, they were all ordering clams, and they couldn't figure out why everybody all of a sudden was ordering clams. And they were masters of the media, so they knew something was in the environment that was conditioning that process. And looked at the placemat, the paper thing they put on for your plate and so on. And they looked at the design, and they saw that the clam were having an orgy in the photography, and so there was a suggestion, a clam plate suggestion in the map that they were looking at. There are a lot of subliminal messages that you don't even know that you're getting that at the subliminal level. And so he named the third volume of his 3-volume work, The Clam Plate Orgy and Other Subliminal Manipulations. So I watched the background, and the background is where the real decision-making is going on. And that's true in terms of these people who are the master of the seat. They're very good at it, but I don't get distracted by them. I don't listen. And one thing that I make it a point to do and that's not to listen to politicians. I don't listen to them. When they come on, unless it's somebody is not 100% of anything, right? Unless it's somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene, maybe to a smaller extent, but he's gotten very quiet up there too, and that's Burgess Owens. How many people have heard anything from Burgess Owens since he got up there? They're going to go in as a freshman class and go in there. They're going to shake things up, and they were going in with so much energy, and they're gonna transform Congress, and they're gonna make this particular statement and stand on these principles and so on and so forth. Well, do you see Burgess Owens on television? Any of these talk shows? He's keeping his head down now because it's not what he thought it was. That's a cesspool up there. And these people are masters at what they do, not masters in terms of running the country. That they're terrible at. They don't do a good job of running the country. This country has not been run well since the 1800s. And they're not running it well at all today. It's probably more out of control today than it's ever been on all levels, federal, state, and local levels. This country is totally, it's in a spiral, and the spiral is downward. I'm sorry, but the job that we elected them to do is not being done. And that's why I can't understand incumbency. But I'm going to watch carefully what happens in California. We have a real chance to transform the country and get the people back in charge of the country. They're supposed to be the ones in charge. I don't know if people are aware of the fact that that's the incongruency between the politicians and the people, because the people are put in charge of the country, and there's a vying for that control between the politicians, whom we put in there, by the way, but we are electing our dictators. And so we are voting them in, and they're competing with us for the sovereignty of the country. We're the sovereignty of the country. The people are sovereign. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. The people are entrusted with that responsibility. And that's where the friction is, because they want that power, and we are supposed to be the ones that are the custodian of that power. I want to say this to Alan Dershowitz. Well, I'm finding I don't like this man. This man is a total fraud. I was listening to Alan Dershowitz this past, it had to have been Friday. It was on this program called American Agenda. And I was watching, when I heard he's going to be on there, I definitely tuned that in. I wanted to tape it at that point. And I taped it. I think I've listened to it about 5 times. Just that one segment where Alan Dershowitz is in. And I first of all, I'm put on guard when anyone tells me that I love the Constitution. Whenever they say that, my ears perk up because I don't believe them. And I heard Amy Barrett say that. Now I don't, and I thought that might, I didn't know her from Adam, but she said that again. I'm going to fall out of my chair after what they did in this election in 2020, November the 3rd, 2020. What they did there, I cannot believe that she can say that again and believe she'll have any credibility in saying it. But I was listening to Alan Dershowitz this past weekend, and Alan Dershowitz was talking about how he's not there to give his opinion, but give his legal what was the words he used? That he was expertise. He didn't say expertise, but he used the word. In other words, it's his view from the mountaintop. This man's an expert in the Constitution, and that's what he purports. There's no evidence of it. That's what he claims. And then he was telling. It was about the inoculation. He was talking about how the government, the federal government, doesn't have police powers, but then he started to act as if they do have that, and he said that almost in the next breath that the government can mandate vaccination. The federal government can mandate vaccinations. But he said what the court will probably do is they'll probably get around it by skirting around the issue by saying the president cannot do it. That's what Biden is trying to do, mandate it. And they're going to get around it, he said, by putting it on the onus of the president having acted in this way, and therefore don't rule about whether or not the federal government itself can do it. But the federal government cannot do it because the federal government must have authorization to act. But let me tell Alan Dershowitz something. The Constitution is an authoritative document. It's an authoritative document. It orders government around. And only in 3 cases does it use the word except. Unless the word except is in the document, there is no exception to its claims. Its authoritative voice is explicit and absolute unless it says in its own language, except, which gives you an exception to the rule. That's true, whether you agree with it or not, Alan Dershowitz. Okay. Watch the deception. And let's continue to refine the republic, because if we don't get this under control, we are moving headlong toward Australia right as we speak. And this train has got to stop. And we got a chance to do something about it tomorrow in California. Okay, I got to get out of here. Want you to follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.